I'm Elizabeth Brooks, and at 59, I thought I'd seen everything the forest could offer. Wrong. Dead wrong. The community center's fluorescent lights made my mushroom photographs look clinical, sterile. Nothing like the damp earth and filtered sunlight where I'd found each specimen. I adjusted the lighting on my favorite shot, a cluster of oyster mushrooms growing from a rotting oak, their ivory caps catching morning dew like tears. These are incredible. The voice made me turn. A woman stood behind me, maybe 30, studying my work with the intensity of a scientist. Blonde hair caught the gallery lights, and when she looked up, her brown eyes held genuine appreciation. Most people think fungi are just gross, I said, surprised by my own response. Most people don't understand beauty in the wild. She stepped closer to examine a close-up of chanterelles. I'm Courtney Richardson. Elizabeth Brooks. Her handshake was firm, confident, professional. You're the mycologist who wrote that piece in Nature last year. The one about climate change affecting spore distribution. Damn. Someone who actually reads scientific journals. Guilty as charged. I run Sage Kitchen on the Upper East Side. The Michelin-starred restaurant. I'd heard of it but never eaten there. Too expensive for a researcher's salary. What brings a chef to a mushroom photography exhibit? Inspiration. She gestured to my chanterelle photograph. These grow wild upstate? If you know where to look. Her smile was slow, calculating. Would you teach me? Something in her tone made my pulse quicken. After my divorce 15 years ago, I'd sworn off complications, especially younger women with careers and expectations. But standing in that sterile gallery, watching this beautiful stranger examine my life's work with genuine fascination, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Want? It's dangerous, I warned. Poisonous varieties look almost identical to edible ones. I trust expert guidance. The way she said it made heat rise in my chest. Professional interest, I told myself. Nothing more. Saturday morning. Grand Central, 7 a.m. Dress for hiking. It's a date. She paused, color rising in her cheeks. I mean, an appointment, a learning opportunity. I watched her walk away, noting how other gallery visitors' eyes followed her graceful movements. At 31, she probably had her pick of partners. What could she possibly want with a weathered old scientist who spent more time with fungi than people? But as I packed up my photographs that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about her brown eyes and the way she'd said it's a date before catching herself. Maybe, just maybe, she'd meant exactly what she said. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday arrived with crisp October air, and my nerves wound tight as a spring trap. Courtney appeared at Grand Central exactly on time, looking like she'd stepped from an outdoor gear catalog. Her hiking boots were too pristine, but at least she'd listened about dressing appropriately. Ready for your first lesson in mycological treasures? I asked, shouldering my collection basket. Been ready since Tuesday. The train ride upstate gave us time to talk. She told me about her restaurant, how she'd worked her way up from prep cook to executive chef in 8 years. I found myself sharing stories about my research, the thrill of discovering new species, the politics of academic publishing. You live alone? She asked, as forests began replacing suburbs outside our window. For 15 years now. Divorce. I kept it simple. You? Always alone. Haven't found the right... She paused, choosing words carefully. Haven't found the right person yet. Something in her tone made me glance over. She was studying her hands, avoiding eye contact. Interesting. My apartment building looked shabby compared to where someone with her success probably lived. The elevator wheezed to the 4th floor, and I fumbled with keys, suddenly self-conscious about bringing her here. Sorry about the mess, I said, opening the door to my cluttered sanctuary. Courtney stepped inside, eyes wide. This is incredible. She wasn't lying. Every surface held specimens. Dried mushrooms in labeled jars. Field guides stacked 3 deep microscopy equipment crowding my dining table. The walls displayed my best photographs alongside scientific charts showing spore structures. It's like a natural history museum, she whispered, approaching a display case filled with preserved fungi. You collected all of these yourself? 30 years of field work. She moved through my space like she belonged there, asking intelligent questions about each specimen. When she reached my prized collection of rare bellites, her fingertips traced the glass reverently. They're beautiful, like jewels. Most people think I'm crazy, living surrounded by fungus. Most people are idiots. I laughed, genuinely surprised. Hungry? I can throw something together. Let me cook, please. She opened my refrigerator, examining contents with professional assessment. You have excellent ingredients. Simple, fresh, unprocessed. I don't eat out much. Within minutes, she'd transformed my basic supplies into something extraordinary. Her knife work was precise, efficient. She moved around my cramped kitchen like she'd been there for years, somehow never getting in my way despite the tight space. Where did you learn to cook like this? I asked, watching her plate wild rice and roasted vegetables with restaurant-quality presentation. My grandmother, then culinary school, then years of making mistakes. We ate at my small table, sharing stories over wine that tasted better than anything I'd bought myself. She asked about my research, really listened to my answers. When I described finding a new Amanita species in the Adirondacks, her eyes lit up. You were the first person to see it, ever. That's the addiction. Discovery. I understand that feeling. Creating something new in the kitchen. The wine made us both bolder. Our conversation drifted from professional to personal. She asked about my marriage, why it ended. I found myself telling her things I hadn't shared with anyone. He wanted children. I wanted my career. Neither of us was wrong, we just wanted different lives. Regrets? Only that we waited so long to admit it. As evening deepened, neither of us moved to end the night. She helped clean dishes, our hands brushing over shared tasks. The apartment felt different with her in it. Warmer, less solitary. I should go, she finally said, but made no move toward the door. Probably. We stood in my narrow hallway, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with cooking scents. Her brown eyes held something I hadn't seen in years, interest that had nothing to do with mushrooms or science. Elizabeth. Yes? Nothing. Just, thank you. For tonight. I walked her to the elevator, neither of us speaking. When the doors opened, she turned back. That foraging trip. Rain or shine. Rain or shine. The elevator doors closed, leaving me alone with the lingering scent of her perfume and the dangerous hope that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't too old for new discoveries after all. Dawn broke gray and misty when we met at the trailhead 2 weeks later. Courtney looked different in worn jeans and a faded sweater, less polished, more approachable. Her hiking boots still looked new, but she'd gotten them dirty somewhere. Ready for your real education? I asked, hefting my collection basket. Lead the way, Professor. The forest welcomed us with the musty scent of decomposing leaves and rich earth. I guided her along familiar paths, pointing out likely spots where fungi might hide. Her enthusiasm was infectious. She asked thoughtful questions, took careful notes, photographed everything I showed her. Look here. I knelt beside a fallen log, brushing away debris to reveal a cluster of honey mushrooms. Armillaria mellea. Excellent for cooking, but you have to be absolutely certain of the identification. Courtney crouched beside me, close enough that her shoulder touched mine. How can you tell? I guided her hand to the specimens, our fingers intertwining as I showed her the distinguishing features. Ring around the stem, see? And these gills, notice how they're attached. Her hand was warm under mine, soft compared to my weathered skin. Neither of us pulled away. Your hands tell stories, she said quietly. 40 years of fieldwork, thorns, rough bark, cold mornings. They're beautiful. I looked up, startled by the sincerity in her voice. Her brown eyes held something deeper than professional interest, something that made my pulse quicken despite my better judgment. We spent the morning filling our baskets with oyster mushrooms, chicken of the woods, and late-season chanterelles. Courtney proved surprisingly adept at spotting specimens, her chef's eye translating well to foraging. There. She pointed to a cluster of golden trumpets barely visible under fallen leaves. Are those? Damn good eye. I was genuinely impressed. Craterellus tubiformis, prized by European chefs, and American ones who know what they're looking for. By noon, we'd hike deep into the woods. I led her to my favorite spot, a hidden clearing beside a stream where the water ran clear over smooth stones. Ancient oaks created a natural cathedral, their branches filtering sunlight into golden pools. This is magic, Courtney whispered. I've been coming here for 20 years, never brought anyone else. Why me? The question hung between us like morning mist. I unwrapped the lunch I'd packed. Simple sandwiches, fruit, coffee in a thermos. But Courtney produced containers from her backpack, revealing a feast that put my efforts to shame. Wild mushroom tart, she explained, slicing generous portions, made with specimens from our last outing. And this salad uses foraged greens I've been experimenting with. The food was extraordinary, complex flavors that somehow enhanced rather than masked the natural taste of wild ingredients. I closed my eyes, savoring each bite. This is incredible. You've captured something I've never tasted in restaurants. Because most chefs don't understand the source. They buy from suppliers, never touch earth or breathe forest air. We ate slowly, reluctant to break the spell of this hidden place. Courtney told me about her dreams of opening a restaurant focused entirely on foraged ingredients. I found myself sharing my fantasy of writing a field guide that would make mycology accessible to ordinary people. We should collaborate, she said. Your knowledge, my practical applications. I'm not sure I'm the collaborating type. Neither was I, until now. Storm clouds had been building while we talked. The first raindrops sent us scrambling for shelter, but my truck was a half-mile away through thick forest. Within minutes, steady rain became a downpour. Come on. I grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a rocky outcrop that offered minimal protection. We huddled together under the inadequate overhang, getting soaked despite our efforts. Courtney's blonde hair darkened with rain, her sweater clinging to curves I'd tried not to notice. She was shivering, and instinctively I put my arms around her. Better? Much. She looked up at me, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. Her face was inches from mine, close enough that I could feel her breath warm against my skin. The air between us seemed charged with more than just the approaching storm. Elizabeth. Yes? Instead of answering, she reached up, her hand cupping my cheek. Her thumb traced my jaw with surprising tenderness. Time seemed suspended, the world narrowing to just her brown eyes and the soft pressure of her palm against my skin. When she kissed me, it was gentle at first, tentative. A question rather than a statement. I answered by pulling her closer, my hands tangling in her wet hair as the kiss deepened. She tasted like rain and wild honey, like possibilities I'd thought were behind me. We broke apart breathless, foreheads touching as we tried to process what had just happened. I've wanted to do that since the gallery, she whispered. I know. Do you mind? Instead of answering, I kissed her again, longer this time, with the certainty of someone who'd spent too many years denying what she wanted. The rain continued around us, but we'd found our own shelter in each other's arms. The rain had stopped by the time we reached my truck, but neither of us mentioned what had happened under that rocky overhang. The drive back to the city felt different, charged with new possibility and the weight of unspoken questions. Would you like to see where the magic happens? Courtney asked as we hit Manhattan traffic. Your restaurant? After hours. When it's just me and the ingredients. Sage Kitchen sat on a quiet side street, its understated exterior hiding what I knew was culinary excellence. Courtney led me through the darkened dining room, past tables set for tomorrow's service, to her private domain. The kitchen was a temple of stainless steel and precision, everything in its place, surfaces gleaming even after a full day of service. She moved through the space with the confidence of absolute ownership, switching on lights and adjusting equipment with practiced ease. This is where I spend most of my life, she said, running her hand along the central prep station. 16 hours a day, sometimes more. Lonely? Until recently. She pulled our foraged mushrooms from the collection basket, arranging them on the steel counter like an artist laying out paints. Her knife appeared as if by magic, blade singing against stone as she sharpened it with quick, efficient strokes. Watch closely. This is where science meets art. I leaned against the counter, mesmerized as she worked. Her movements were economical, purposeful. Each cut revealed the mushroom's inner structure, gills, stems, the secret architecture I studied under microscopes. You're seeing them differently than I do, I observed. How so? I see cellular structure, reproductive mechanisms, ecological relationships. You see, flavor potential. Her knife paused mid-slice. I see beauty that deserves respect. Same as you. She heated oil in a heavy pan, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. When she added the mushrooms, they sizzled and released their earthy perfume. She worked without recipes, tasting constantly, adjusting seasoning by instinct. Try this. She lifted a forkful of sautéed chanterelles, one hand cupped beneath to catch any drips. I opened my mouth, letting her feed me. The mushrooms were perfect, their nutty flavor enhanced, not masked, by her minimal preparation. But it was the intimacy of the gesture that made my pulse quicken. Incredible, I managed. The secret is understanding what each variety wants. Some need high heat, others gentle warmth. Some pair with cream, others with acid. She moved to another station, assembling components with the efficiency of long practice. Pasta emerged from boiling water, tossed with butter and fresh herbs. A piece of fish hit the pan with a satisfying hiss. "You're creating a symphony," I said, watching her orchestrate multiple dishes simultaneously. Every night. Sometimes for people who don't even notice. I notice. She glanced up, catching something in my voice. "I hoped you would." The finished plates looked like art. Colors balanced, textures contrasted, each element purposeful. She transformed our morning's harvest into something extraordinary. "Sit," she commanded, pulling out a stool at the prep station. We ate in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the tools of her trade. The food was exceptional, but I found myself watching her more than eating. The way she tasted each bite thoughtfully, making mental notes, the graceful movement of her hands. The unconscious way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Sorry. I'm just trying to understand you." "What's to understand?" "This morning in the forest, I struggled for words. "I don't usually." "Neither do I." She set down her fork, meeting my eyes directly. "I've never kissed a woman before, never wanted to. And now? Now I can't stop thinking about it." The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the space between us charged with possibility. She stood, moving around the prep station until she was directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with cooking scents. "Elizabeth?" "Yes?" "I'd like to kiss you again, if that's okay." Instead of answering, I reached for her, pulling her close. This time there was no hesitation, no tentative exploration. She kissed me with the same confidence she brought to cooking, purposeful, skilled, wholly present. Her hands found my face, fingers threading through my hair as the kiss deepened. I tasted wine on her lips, felt the warmth of her body against mine. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I should take you home," she whispered, though her hands remained on my face. "Should you?" "Before I do something we're not ready for." But neither of us moved. The kitchen around us felt like a cocoon, protecting us from the world and its expectations. Just two women who'd found something unexpected in each other's arms. "Courtney?" "Yes?" "I'm glad it was you. In the forest. Here. All of it." She smiled, the expression transforming her face from beautiful to radiant. "So am I." We'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks when I found the box, hidden behind holiday decorations in my hall closet, wrapped in a moth-eaten shawl that smelled of lavender and thyme. "What's that?" Courtney asked, looking up from the research notes she'd been reading on my couch. "I have no idea." The wooden container was ornate, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. It felt heavier than its size suggested. Must have been my grandmother's. Inside, nestled in faded silk, lay an assortment of dried herbs and mushrooms I'd never seen before. The specimens were perfectly preserved despite obvious age, their colors vivid as the day they were harvested. Beneath them, a leather journal filled with spidery handwriting in faded ink. "These are incredible," I whispered, lifting a delicate fungus that seemed to shimmer in the lamplight. Courtney joined me on the floor, her shoulder warm against mine. "What does the journal say?" The writing was difficult to decipher, but certain phrases stood out. Something about binding hearts, forest spirits, love that transcends time. I laughed nervously. Grandmother always was eccentric. She was a romantic. That night I brewed tea using some of the mysterious herbs, curious about their properties. The flavor was complex, earthy with an undertone of something almost floral. Courtney tried it too, declaring it the most interesting blend she'd ever tasted. We fell asleep on my couch, curled together like we'd been doing it for years. The dreams started that same night. I found myself in a moonlit forest clearing, surrounded by women in flowing dresses. They moved in slow circles, chanting words I couldn't understand but somehow felt in my bones. At the center of their dance, two figures embraced, one older with silver-streaked hair, one younger with golden blonde locks that caught moonlight like spun silk. I woke with a gasp, heart pounding. Beside me, Courtney was stirring restlessly, her face troubled even in sleep. "Bad dream?" I whispered. "Strange dream. You were there. Forest clearing? Women dancing?" Her eyes snapped open. "You saw it too?" We compared details over coffee, finding our dreams had been identical in every way. Neither of us could explain it, but the shared experience felt significant somehow. The next few nights brought more dreams, each more vivid than the last. Always the same clearing, the same dancing figures, the same sense of witnessing something ancient and powerful. But it wasn't just dreams. Objects in my apartment began moving on their own. Books I'd left on tables appeared on different shelves, photographs shifted positions overnight. My grandmother's box relocated itself from the bedroom to the kitchen counter. "You're imagining things," Courtney said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then it happened to her, too. "My knife block rearranged itself," she told me during lunch at her restaurant. "I know exactly where I keep each blade, and this morning they were in completely different slots. Maybe you moved them without thinking. Maybe. Or maybe whatever's affecting you is affecting me too." That evening, we were cooking dinner in my apartment when every jar in my spice cabinet opened simultaneously, their contents spilling across the counter in perfectly straight lines. We stared at the mess, neither of us speaking. "Okay," Courtney said finally. "That didn't just happen." The phenomena intensified over the following days. Lights flickered when we touched, water ran from faucets we hadn't turned on, and we both continued having the same dreams every night. Worse, we were starting to sense each other's thoughts and emotions even when apart. I'd know when Courtney was stressed at work, feel her frustration with difficult customers. She'd call just as I was thinking about her, as if summoned by my mental voice. "This is getting weird," she said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table where we'd been trying to decode more of my grandmother's journal. "Weird doesn't begin to cover it. Do you think the herbs did something to us?" I looked at the wooden box, which had somehow moved itself to the windowsill while we weren't watching. I think my grandmother was involved in things I never knew about. The journal's pages seemed to glow in the lamplight, revealing passages that hadn't been visible before. Words about ancient knowledge, about fungi that could bind souls as well as soil, about love that transcended the boundaries of ordinary experience. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a newly visible paragraph. "She writes about mushrooms that grow in sacred places, specimens that can connect hearts across any distance. Like a love potion? More like a love amplifier. Something that makes existing feelings stronger, more visible." Courtney was quiet for a long moment, studying my grandmother's careful script. "Do you think what we feel is real, or just some kind of magical influence?" It was the question I'd been afraid to ask myself. I don't know. That night, as we lay in my bed trying to sleep, the apartment filled with the sound of whispers, voices speaking in languages neither of us recognized but both somehow understood. They were calling us, summoning us to that moonlit clearing from our dreams. "We have to go there," Courtney said in the darkness. "Go where?" "The clearing." "It's real, Elizabeth. I know where it is." The clearing was exactly as we'd seen it in our dreams. A perfect circle of grass surrounded by ancient oaks, moonlight filtering through branches like silver threads. But standing there in reality, with Courtney's hand warm in mine, the mystical atmosphere felt less threatening than intriguing. "How did you know where to find this place?" I asked as we stepped into the center. "I drove past it every day for a week. Like something was pulling me here." The whispers we'd been hearing in my apartment grew louder, though still incomprehensible. But the feeling they conveyed was clear: welcome, recognition, approval. "Your grandmother's journal," Courtney said, pulling the leather book from her backpack. "Read the passage about the binding ritual." I found the page, words now glowing clearly in the moonlight. "When two hearts recognize their true connection, the forest spirits will test their bond. Those who pass through the trial together will share a love that transcends mortal understanding." Test our bond how? As if summoned by my question, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Frost began forming on the grass beneath our feet, spreading outward in intricate patterns. The whispers became a chorus, and translucent figures began materializing at the clearing's edge. "Don't let go of my hand," Courtney said, her grip tightening. The figures moved closer. Women in flowing robes, their faces shifting between young and old, familiar and strange. I recognized my grandmother among them, but she looked different, younger, her eyes holding secrets I'd never suspected. "They're showing us something," Courtney whispered. The air shimmered, and suddenly we were watching scenes play out like ghostly theater. My grandmother as a young woman, standing in this same clearing with another woman, both of them surrounded by the same dancing figures. The ritual, the binding, the love that lasted 60 years despite a world that tried to keep them apart. She was like us, I breathed. The herbs, the mushrooms, they're not creating feelings. They're revealing what's already there. The visions shifted, showing other couples throughout history. Women who'd found each other in this sacred space, who'd been blessed by whatever ancient forces still guarded this place. All of them facing the same choice we face now, to accept this gift or walk away. "What happens if we choose to stay?" Courtney asked the glowing figures. My grandmother's spirit stepped forward. Her voice carried on the wind. "You become part of something larger than yourselves, connected not just to each other, but to every woman who's ever loved boldly despite the cost. And if we leave? You keep what you've found, but you'll always wonder what might have been." The choice felt enormous, terrifying, wonderful. I looked at Courtney, seeing my own uncertainty reflected in her brown eyes. "I've never believed in magic," I said. "I've never believed in love at first sight either. Is that what this is? I don't know. But I know I don't want to find out what life feels like without you." The spirits began their ancient dance, circling us as they had in our dreams. But this time, we were participants, not observers. The ritual required us to speak our truth, to acknowledge what we'd been afraid to say aloud. "I love you," Courtney said, the words echoing in the moonlit clearing. "I love you too." The moment we spoke, the supernatural phenomena that had been plaguing us intensified briefly before settling into something warm and constant. Not the chaotic disruption of the past weeks, but a gentle hum of connection that felt right. We spent the rest of the night in the clearing, talking, kissing, holding each other as the spirits slowly faded with approaching dawn. When we finally made love, it was with the profound intimacy of souls recognizing each other across lifetimes. Her touch ignited something deeper than physical desire, a recognition that this woman, this moment, was what I'd been searching for without knowing it. Our bodies moved together with surprising harmony, as if we'd been lovers for years rather than weeks. The pleasure was intense but secondary to the overwhelming sense of belonging I felt in her arms. When we finally drove back to the city, the wooden box sat quietly on my kitchen counter, its mysterious contents no longer glowing or shifting. The supernatural disturbances had ended, but what remained was stronger than any mystical influence. "So, what now?" Courtney asked over coffee in my sun-brightened kitchen. "Now we figure out how to build a life together. Your world and mine are pretty different. Good thing we're not ordinary people." She laughed, the sound filling my apartment with warmth. "No, I suppose we're not." The age difference that had worried me seemed less important now. The mystical experiences had shown us that love operates outside normal boundaries. Age, background, expectation. What mattered was the connection we'd found, the way we challenged and complemented each other. "I want to try that collaboration we talked about," I said. "The cookbook combining foraging and cooking. I'd like that." "But Elizabeth?" "Yes? I want us to be more than business partners." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "We already are." Mrs. Chen from 4 Billions knocked on my door 3 days after our clearing experience, holding a casserole dish and wearing the expression of someone with news to share. "Your grandmother was quite the local character," she said, settling into my kitchen chair with obvious familiarity. "Helped a lot of women through difficult times, if you know what I mean." I poured tea, sensing this conversation had been building for years. "What kind of help?" "Love problems, mainly. Women who couldn't find the right man, or who'd found the right person, but it complicated things." Her eyes held knowing warmth. Rose had a way of seeing what people needed before they knew it themselves. "Rose?" "Your grandmother. She went by Rose in the neighborhood, though I suspect that wasn't her given name either." Courtney arrived as Mrs. Chen was leaving, carrying grocery bags and wearing her concerned expression. Everything okay? You sounded stressed on the phone. Just learning family history I never knew existed. The supernatural occurrences had stopped completely, but their absence felt strange after weeks of mystical disruption. My apartment seemed too quiet, too normal. Even the mysterious herbs had lost their shimmer, becoming ordinary dried plants. Do you miss it? Courtney asked, following my gaze to the wooden box. The magic? Sometimes. It felt like proof that what we have is special. What we have is special. Magic or no magic. But doubt had been creeping in since our return to ordinary life. In the stark light of day, our age difference felt more pronounced. She had a thriving career, social obligations, a future full of possibilities. I had tenure, pension planning, and reading glasses I needed more often each year. Maybe the forest spirits were right to test us, I said that evening over dinner. What do you mean? This isn't going to be easy. People will have opinions about us, about the age gap, about everything. Courtney set down her fork, studying my face. Are you having second thoughts? I'm having realistic thoughts. Same thing in this case. The conversation we'd been avoiding finally erupted that weekend. I'd been invited to speak at a mycology conference in Boston, and when I mentioned it, Courtney asked if she could come along. Won't that look odd? You bringing a date to a professional event? Date? Her voice went cold. Is that all I am to you? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Elizabeth? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're embarrassed to be seen with me. We'd been in her apartment, ostensibly planning our cookbook project. Now the research materials scattered across her dining table looked like evidence of a naive dream. I'm not embarrassed. I'm being practical. Practical about what? The fact that I'm younger? That I'm a woman? That people might talk? All of it. She stood abruptly, moving to the window overlooking the city. I thought what happened in the clearing changed things for you. It did. But clearing experiences don't pay mortgages or handle career consequences. So, what are you saying? I looked at her silhouette against the window, seeing the tension in her shoulders, the hurt she was trying to hide. I'm saying maybe we should slow down. Take some time to think about whether this is really what we want. I know what I want. Do you? When the novelty wears off, when your friends start asking questions, when you realize you could be with someone who fits your life better? She turned from the window, her expression unreadable. Is that really what you think of me, that I'm here for novelty? I think you're 31 and brilliant and beautiful, and I think you deserve better than a middle-aged professor who spends more time with fungi than people. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? The question hung between us like a challenge. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the drama playing out in this Upper East Side apartment. Maybe we both need space to think, I said finally. Space. Just temporary. To make sure we're not being influenced by whatever happened out there. Courtney nodded slowly, her professional mask sliding into place. Fine. Take your space, Elizabeth. Take all the space you need. I left her apartment feeling simultaneously relieved and devastated. The city streets seemed uglier somehow, the November air carrying promises of a bitter winter. For 3 weeks, we didn't speak. I threw myself into research, writing grant proposals with manic energy. She sent a brief email about putting the cookbook project on hold indefinitely. Professional, polite, devastating in its finality. The dreams returned on the 3rd week, not the mystical visions from before, but ordinary dreams where Courtney and I were together, cooking, laughing, sharing quiet moments that felt more real than my waking hours. I was miserable, and apparently making everyone around me miserable too. You look terrible, my research assistant informed me after I'd snapped at her for the 3rd time that day. Thank you for that professional assessment. Whatever's wrong, fix it. You're making the lab unbearable. That evening, I found myself walking past Sage Kitchen, telling myself I was just out for air. Through the windows, I could see Courtney in her element, directing her kitchen staff with the quiet authority I'd fallen in love with. She looked tired, thinner. When she glanced toward the window, our eyes met for a brief moment before she turned away. I went home and called her. Elizabeth? I made a mistake. Silence stretched between us, filled with 3 weeks of hurt and longing. Which mistake? She asked finally. Thinking I could live without you. Come over, she said after a long pause. We need to talk. Her apartment felt different when I arrived an hour later. Colder, more formal. She'd been cooking, the kitchen filled with aromas that usually made me feel welcome. Tonight they seemed like a barrier between us. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, not looking at me. "About taking space, about whether this is real. Courtney, Let me finish." She finally met my eyes. "You were right about some things. This isn't easy. The age difference, the professional complications, all of it." My heart sank. "So you've decided—" "I've decided you're a coward." The words hit like cold water. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You're brilliant, accomplished, respected in your field. But when it comes to your personal life, you're a damn coward." I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. She wasn't finished. "Those 3 weeks apart were hell, Elizabeth. I couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate at work. My sous chef actually asked if I was sick because my food tasted so bland." "I know the feeling." "Do you? Because you seem pretty good at walking away when things get complicated." She was right, and we both knew it. I was scared. Of what? Of not being enough for you. Of holding you back. Of watching you realize you'd made a mistake. "And you decided that for me? Without asking what I wanted?" I sank into her couch, feeling every one of my 59 years. I thought I was being noble. "You were being stupid." She sat beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "I don't need you to protect me from my own choices. What if people judge us?" "Let them. I've spent my entire career being judged by men who thought I didn't belong in professional kitchens. You think I'm worried about some gossip? What about your future? Children, marriage, all the things you might want. I want you." The simplicity of it broke something loose in my chest. Even with all the complications? Especially with the complications. She reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "Elizabeth, whatever happened in that forest clearing didn't create what we have. It just showed us what was already there." "I know that now." "Do you? Because I need to be sure you're not going to panic again the first time someone makes a comment about us." I studied her face, seeing the hurt I'd caused alongside the hope she was trying to hide. "I can't promise I won't have moments of doubt. This is all new for me." "New for me too. But I can promise I won't run again. Not without talking to you first." She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I missed you." "I missed you too." "Show me." The invitation in her voice was unmistakable. I reached for her, pulling her against me with desperate relief. Our kiss was hungry, desperate, 3 weeks of longing compressed into fierce contact. "I was an idiot," I whispered against her lips. "Yes, you were." We moved to her bedroom without discussion, shedding clothes and inhibitions with equal urgency. This time, our lovemaking carried the intensity of nearly losing each other. Every touch felt precious, every kiss a promise renewed. Her body beneath mine was warm silk and infinite possibility. When she arched against me, calling my name, I understood that age was just a number, that what mattered was this connection we'd found despite all odds. The way she responded to my touch, the soft sounds she made, the complete trust she offered, it was more intoxicating than any mystical influence. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest, both of us reluctant to break the spell. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we do the work. Figure out how to make this relationship real, practical, sustainable. Starting with, I'd like you to come to Boston with me, as my partner, not just my date." She lifted her head to look at me. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure I don't want to pretend anymore. About us, about what this means to me." "It means something to you?" "It means everything." She smiled, the expression transforming her face from beautiful to radiant. "In that case, yes, I'd love to come to Boston." "Good. And Courtney?" "Yes? I think we should restart that cookbook project. I have some ideas about combining field research with practical applications." "Professional collaboration?" "Among other things." She laughed, the sound filling her bedroom with warmth. "I love your other things. I love you." The words came easier now, without the weight of supernatural pressure or mystical influence. Just truth, simple and strong enough to build a future on. "I love you too." Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, but inside this bedroom, time felt suspended. We had found something rare and precious, something worth fighting for despite the obstacles ahead. Elizabeth? No more running. No more running. It was a promise I intended to keep. 1 year later, I stood in the same community center gallery where we'd first met, watching Courtney arrange our joint exhibition with the meticulous precision I'd fallen in love with. "Stop hovering," she said without looking up. "Your nervous energy is making me nervous." "I'm not nervous. You've rearranged that mushroom photograph 6 times in the past hour." She was right. Tonight's opening would mark the launch of our cookbook, Wild Hearts, Wild Harvests, along with a photography exhibition showcasing our collaboration. My scientific images paired with her culinary artistry, telling the story of forest to table in ways neither of us could have achieved alone. What if people don't understand what we're trying to do? Then they don't get to eat our food. The catering station displayed dishes made entirely from foraged ingredients, the culmination of a year's worth of experimentation, research, and countless early morning hikes through upstate forests. Each plate represented hours of work, multiple failed attempts, and the kind of creative partnership I'd never imagined possible. "Besides," she added, hanging the final photograph, "we're not doing this for them. Who are we doing it for? For every woman who's ever been told she's too old, too young, too different to find love. For your grandmother Rose and her secret romance. For us." The first guests began arriving at 6. Colleagues from the university, food critics from major publications, fellow chefs who'd come to support Courtney's latest venture. I recognized several faces from her restaurant's regular clientele. "Elizabeth Brooks, right?" A young food writer approached with notepad ready. "Can you tell me about your transition from academic research to culinary collaboration?" "It wasn't really a transition," I explained. "More like discovering a new application for existing knowledge. Courtney helped me understand that science and art aren't mutually exclusive. And your personal relationship with Chef Richardson? How does that influence the work?" The question I'd been dreading. I glanced across the room where Courtney was explaining our foraging techniques to a group of restaurant owners, her face animated with genuine passion. "Our relationship informs everything we do," I said honestly. "She sees possibility where I see data. I provide scientific foundation for her creative instincts. We make each other better. But the age difference is irrelevant to our professional collaboration." The writer scribbled notes, clearly hoping for more personal details. But I'd learned to set boundaries, to protect what mattered most while still being authentic about our partnership. Dr. Martinez from the university approached as the food writer moved on. "Elizabeth, I have to say, this exhibition is remarkable. The integration of scientific documentation with practical application. It's exactly what our field needs." "Thank you, though I can't take full credit." "Ah, yes, your chef. She's quite impressive. Very knowledgeable about mycological terminology. She's had excellent teachers." "I'm sure." "Will you be continuing this collaboration?" "Definitely. We're already planning our next project. A field guide for amateur foragers that includes safety protocols and recipe suggestions." The evening progressed smoothly, our exhibition drawing positive attention from both scientific and culinary communities. Several publishers expressed interest in future projects, and a food television network wanted to discuss a potential documentary series. But the moment that mattered most came near closing time, when a young woman approached Courtney and me as we stood together reviewing the guest book. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" Courtney asked. "For being visible. For showing that love comes in different packages." She glanced around nervously, then continued. "I'm 25, and I've been struggling with some personal realizations. Seeing you two together, successful and happy, it gives me hope." After she left, Courtney and I stood in comfortable silence, watching the last guests examine our photographs. "Worth all the complications?" she asked. "Every single one." We closed the exhibition at 10, working together to carefully pack unsold photographs and leftover food. The community center felt different, empty. Less like a venue, more like a place where something important had begun. "I have something for you," Courtney said as we loaded the last box into her car. She pulled a small wrapped package from her purse, watching nervously as I opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring set with a small amber stone. "It's not an engagement ring," she said quickly. "More like a promise ring. A symbol of commitment without all the legal complications." I slipped it on my finger, surprised by how perfectly it fit. It's beautiful. The amber contains a fossilized mushroom spore. I had the jeweler make it special. How is that even possible? Science and art working together. Like us. I kissed her there in the community center parking lot, not caring who might see. The ring felt warm on my finger, a tangible reminder of what we'd built together. So what's next for us? I asked as we drove through the city. More of everything. More collaborations, more adventures, more time to figure out this crazy thing we've got. Sounds perfect. At a red light, she reached over and took my hand, her thumb tracing the new ring. I love you, Elizabeth Brooks. I love you too, Courtney Richardson. The light changed, and we drove toward home, her apartment that had become our apartment, filled with both her kitchen equipment and my research materials, a space that represented the life we'd built from impossible beginnings. Behind us, the community center stood quiet in the November night, holding the memory of two exhibitions, the one where we'd met and the one where we'd declared our partnership to the world. Full circle, just like the best stories should be.